Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Wednesday, March 21st, or March 17, 2021. The time right now is 4:06 p.m. The Public Safety Subcommittee of Imani 36 na Guam's Committee on Public Safety, Emergency Response, Military and Veterans Affairs, Mayor's Council, and Public Transit calls this oversight hearing to order. This oversight hearing notice was sent out first on Tuesday, March 9, 2021, to adhere to the 5 working days requirement, and the second oversight hearing, adhering to the 48 hours notice, was sent out on Monday, March 15, 2021, and in addition, these notices were sent to all media and posted in the Guam Legislature's website. Before I move on, I'd like to thank and welcome my fellow colleagues that are here for the hearing today, notably Senator Joanne Brown, Senator James Moylan, Senator Tony Yada, Senator Mary Camacho Torres. Am I missing anybody? Okay. This hearing is being convened to address the concerns shared by members of our community about alleged criminal activity, corruption, and cover-ups by and amongst local law enforcement, but more specifically in the Guam Police Department. Before we get into the specifics of instances or events that I or the senators attending this hearing want to learn more about, I'm going to set the ground rules and parameters for this hearing. First off, let's all be polite with each other. There may be, at some point, there may be some frustration, but let's try to get past this frustration so that we can get to the end goal of this is how do we create a safer community? How do we help the Guam Police Department? Secondly, there will be at least 3 rounds of questioning, with each senator having 5 minutes to ask their questions and receive their answers. Time considering, and if there is a need for additional rounds of questioning, it will be considered. Otherwise, the continuation of this hearing on another date will occur. If it's necessary, we'll do that. All questions will be focused on specific matters and concerns relating to the reason why this hearing was called. Latitude may be provided at the discretion of the chair. Otherwise, my colleagues, you will be interrupted and asked to move on to your next question. The chair acknowledges that many of the concerns on corruption and cover-ups have been spurred by recent events reported by the media. In recognition that there may be ongoing and continuing investigations into these matters, the chair understands those called to testify may not be in the position to provide the answers we seek or may jeopardize an investigation. We surely don't want a bad guy not be caught because he was tipped off or win his case because of a law enforcement secret was revealed in this hearing. That said, and as best can, please refrain from asking any questions pertaining to sources of information, such as confidential informants or undercover agents, specific identities of suspects or targets, methods of investigation that are currently being utilized in the ongoing investigations, or some of the timelines that may exist in these investigations. Okay. For the hearing today, we have signed up, and I see them there. We have, is it Major? Colonel. Colonel. Well, first off, sorry, Colonel. You're a Major? Okay. I can't see the cluster from. We have Chief Steve Ignacio. Thank you, sir, for being here. We have Major Manny Chong. We have, are you wearing Captain or Lieutenant on your bars? Is Captain? Major? You're a Major now? Congratulations. Okay. Major Kiriwa. And then we have, ma'am, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sorry. Good afternoon. My name is Roberta Flores. I'm the personnel officer for the Guam Police Department.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for being here. And then there are a couple other people that I'm sure that we can bring in. There's also, you have, is it Colonel Fred Chargaloff now or Major? Still Major? Still Major? Major Fred Chargaloff and looks like a Ben Flores. Okay, that's here as well. But before we do that, you know, there's some of the things, Chief, that we're going to be asking, and and I'll give you some time to be able to make some opening remarks. While it's an oversight, it's probably informational in nature as well. I think there has been some mischaracterization or some misinformation or some lack of understanding of the information concerning investigations that are being conducted or allegedly being conducted by the Guam Police Department, or if not, if they are or not. And so I'm going to give you the opportunity to be able to answer some questions with regards to the processes that occur when allegations are made against police officers. What are those processes that happen? We're going to also get into possibly some of the more recent events, just so that you can provide us an update on some of these matters, and recognizing too that they may be ongoing and whatnot, but try as best to provide us the information that you can. Okay? So before I move on and start to ask some of these questions, Chief, have you got any remarks or anything that you want to be able to start with or say? Okay, great. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll start with the first round of questioning. And ma'am, thank you for joining us, and maybe you can best provide this answer to this question. What is your current manpower strength in the police department? What is real now and what is preferred?
Have a day and good afternoon to the senators of the 36th Guam Legislature, Senator Blas Jr., Senator Torres, Senator Ada, Senator Moylan, Senator Joanne Brown, and Senator Teleseriwi. So currently we have a total of uniform officers, 297, civilian volunteer police reserve, we have 63, and 60 civilian positions in the Guam Police Department. So that is our current manpower strength. Just to break it down a little bit more, of the 297 uniformed personnel, 72 of those people are in some branch of military service, either in the Guard or Reserve. So it's a pretty high number, a significant number, and because of all that, we experienced some shortages because of deployment. So that's our current manpower strength, sir. That number 297 for uniform includes 4 detention facility guards and the 24 police officer trainees that are currently undergoing training at this time. So that's our manpower strength, sir.
Okay, and what is your preferred manpower strength?
I believe that in past appearances, I've been asked that question, and I believe our number should be at 525, and that was based on a study done by the Department of Interior on the military buildup, in anticipation of the military buildup, and that's in line with making sure that we have enough police officers to service the projected number of people once this buildup is done and in place. Currently, what we're doing within the Guam Police Department to kind of distribute this manpower once we get closer to those numbers is that we're currently in discussion with GURA, and we actually were given, I believe, about 200,000 to move forward with the A&E for an eastern precinct. Right now, we're refocusing that discussion to a couple of buildings within the village of Talafofo. I believe it's the the teacher staff housing within the heart of the village to be converted to use as the eastern substation. The other discussion we're having with GURA right now is to pursue federal funding for the building of the Jigo precinct. So the concept behind that is to co-locate the Jigo precinct with the evidence control section, which as of I believe yesterday or maybe today, the RFP was issued for the A&E for the evidence control section, and that is a project that's about a little over $3 million that we should hopefully be breaking ground soon once the RFP is issued.
Okay. That said, let's go back to your current manpower strength. You have some numbers as to how it's distributed by precinct and by section, by division?
Yes, so we have about 130 plus officers distributed to the patrol section. The rest of the officers are at Investigations Bureau, CID and Forensic Science Division, and Highway Patrol and Special Operations Division.
130?
A little over 130 at the patrol. The rest are distributed among CID, FSD, Forensic Science, the Crime Lab, and Highway Patrol and Special Operations Division. We can come back, sir, or even email to your office the breakdown specifically by division.
Okay, so operationally, let's start with the precincts. Operationally, obviously you've got, 297?
Right.
Police officers, 525. I'm trying to figure out here, okay, what operationally by precinct?
So by precinct, we have at least, at a minimum, I believe about 30 people, but that includes everybody from the captain down to the police officer one.
Let's take your Dedido precinct, for example. What villages do you?
So at Dedido, we covered Jigo and Dedido village, and we have one captain who's the district commander who oversees Tamuning and Dedido precinct. We have one lieutenant at Tamuning, one lieutenant at Dedido, and then we have Sergeant 2 at each precinct, and then we have at least 4 Sergeant 1s, those are the shift supervisors, and then we have police officers.
Okay, and let's just stick with Dedido precinct. How many beats do you have?
We have seven, right? We have 7 beat areas up in Dedido and Jigo.
So ideally you would have 7 patrol officers, 7 beat officers, 1 desk officer, and 1 supervisor?
Right, so that's what we call, ideally we should have what's called 1, 1, and 7. That's 1 field supervisor, 1 desk watch officer, and 7 beat officers. So if you were to add it all up, ideally, Dedido precinct then, that's 9 people total, times 4 shifts that we currently have, we should have at a minimum 36. But because of personnel shortages, we're at least 4 to 5 people short that ideal number. And that's throughout all of the 4 precincts.
Okay, and we're just talking patrol?
Yes, sir.
All right. As a result of your shortages and stuff, what does your overtime look like?
Overtime has been, controlled. Unfortunately, also because of the pandemic, there's been a spike in overtime costs because a lot of the overtime that we're incurring is actually directly attributed to our COVID response.
Okay. As a result of your shortages and everything, have you also seen a spike in the number of complaints against police officers?
Not that there's a spike in the number of complaints against police officers, sir, but I think there's been a lot of media coverage and some concerns from the community regarding the conduct of officers, whether on or off duty.
Okay. So this is safe to assume that you do have some active internal investigations that are going on?
Yes, sir. So I guess let me address in general terms
Okay.
how we conduct
And
investigations.
that's where I was going to get to next.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So, should there be a complaint against a police officer? You know, the first thing we do is determine, of course, who the police officer is, and then we look at the complaint. Is the complaint against the police officer criminal in nature? Did he commit a criminal act? Or was it administrative in nature? Did he violate a general order? Did he violate a rule? Let me use this example. Back in, I believe, 2019, there was a off-duty police officer who was involved in the theft of a wallet at a store. And so we look at that, and then we see that there's two violations. There's two areas that an investigation needs to be conducted. One, the criminal investigation into the theft of the wallet. Second is the theft of the wallet is a conformance to laws, meaning he violated the rules by not following the laws of our island. And so we open up two separate investigations, a criminal and an internal investigations. So which type of investigation we open is dependent upon what the allegation is and whether it's a criminal offense or internal affairs investigation. If there's an allegation against an officer, of course there will always be an internal affairs investigation that's opened. And it's from that internal affairs investigation we determine if there's a violation of any of our existing general orders or the rules and regulations that we have in place within the Guam Police Department.
Okay, let me just go down the line here. Allegations of misconduct or criminal activity against a police officer that you receive from an anonymous source. Okay, let's say this individual just wants to make the complaint and doesn't want to leave their name. It comes to Crime Stoppers, they probably not going their identity is going to be hidden and stuff. How do you handle this type of
Again, sir, it's just like any other complaint that comes in, whether it comes from a known source, somebody who publicly identified themselves, or comes into our internal affairs, or to an anonymous source, like you said, maybe a Crime Stoppers tip. We try and determine who the officer is if the officer is not named, or if there's a named officer, we try and go back and validate or confirm if there's an actual crime or an actual violation committed by the officer.
Okay, and this would go the same if this allegation was received from a confidential informant?
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, sir.
And then same as if the individual wants to name himself. There's no differentiation in as far as how you handle this kind of
Yes, sir.
This
There's no
investigation.
difference. We determine, we look at the allegation and we determine is there an internal affairs investigation, and also if there's a criminal investigation that needs to be opened.
Okay.
And sometimes they run concurrently.
What about allegations or information that you receive from another agency?
So depends on which agency comes forward. So
And let's be specific here. Another law enforcement entity.
right. So let me use this online gambling. So I'm sure that may come up, maybe as a question from one of the panel. So let me just address the online gambling, since it's one of the stories that's been in the news lately. So and before I make this statement here publicly, I did confer with the Secret Service that I can mention them in today's hearing. So I received information from the Secret Service, another law enforcement partner here on the island, that they were actively investigating a member of the Guam Police Department, and they named the member of the Guam Police Department to me. So they identified that they were doing a criminal investigation. So what I did is I opened up the internal affairs investigation. Now, that investigation is ongoing, just like all other internal affairs investigation. So I'm not going to name the employee, but I do have a name of the employee. The other thing that came out was that other officers within the Guam Police Department were part of this investigation. but they were not named to me. So I don't have a name to go on. I can't open an internal affairs investigation into unknown persons within the Guam Police Department because I don't have a specific name to go on. I think there was some speculation that the officer that is named to me by the Secret Service, my investigation stemmed from what happened at the airport. And let me just say right now that that is not the case. I was informed by the Secret Service of this investigation into one of my employees. And let me take it a step further because back in March 3rd of 2020, there was a joint letter issued by myself and the Attorney General of Guam, Mr. Levin Camacho. And in that, we indicated that we were doing a joint investigation. Now, a lot of that goes back to allegations that came out during the Mark Mayo trial and the former Mayor Jesse Blas trial. So we decided that we're going to do a joint investigation into any criminal acts that may have been committed by law enforcement personnel or public safety personnel that have come about during that investigation. Now, taking that a step further, I had a conversation with the acting chief investigator, Anthony V. Camacho from the Attorney General's office, and we have expanded our joint investigation, and we're now looking into possible criminal activities of government employees in this online gambling investigation being done by the feds, by the Secret Service. So that's where we're at with those three, and I'm sure there might be questions about these three specific cases, but let me just come out and address those now. That we are working jointly with the Attorney General's office, and to that end, I have temporarily assigned a TDY, one of my officers, to the AG's office to assist with those investigations. So that is an ongoing investigation right now, a criminal investigation.
Okay, and the lead agency on that investigation is the AG's office?
Absolutely, yes. It's not necessarily that they're taking the lead, sir. I would call it a joint investigation.
Joint investigation.
I have an interest in it also as well, by putting my personnel there to work alongside them.
Okay. Now let's talk about joint investigation. So, scenario here is you receive information about one of your officers possibly being involved in some criminal activity as a result of an investigation that you're doing jointly with another entity, of which the entity is the lead agency. What are your restrictions or what are your limitations in as far as sharing information or being a part, how active you're going to be in this investigation?
So, because we're part of that joint investigation, and of course, taking the lead with the AG's office taking the lead, we have a play in the investigation, but these are criminal investigations, Senator, and so we don't discuss criminal investigations, unfortunately, in public, and we don't identify who we're investigating, what we're investigating them for. I think suffice to say that criminal investigations are underway regarding at least those three areas of concern that have recently become public and a cause for concern in our community.
What are some of the concerns that you have in as far as, having to share the information with the public? I know it's common knowledge in law enforcement, but for the purposes of the community, who's probably watching and some of my colleagues, what are some of the dangers and concerns?
Yeah. So, circling back to the Mark Mayo trial, I don't know that, and I didn't follow the entire trial, but I did follow some of the things that were of interest with regards to some of maybe allegations against law enforcement personnel or public safety personnel that I really don't even know who they are or which agency, because I don't remember that the Guam Police Department was named specifically in the Mark Mayo trial. I do know that in the Mayor Jesse Blas trial, there was an allegation of a police officer who had supposedly threatened one of the witnesses in the Mayor Jesse Blas trial. So that's one area that we're going to focus on with respect to the Guam Police Department personnel. And then again, with the online gambling, we're focused on possible criminal activity of people involved in this gambling scheme.
Okay, and so along those lines, is it common, or is it, for lack of a better term, I don't want to even say mandatory, but do law enforcement agencies typically, commonly, or whatnot, provide you information or saying that they're going, if they're conducting an investigation and they happen to come across the name of a police officer or the actions of a police officer, are they obligated to be able to inform you that they're conducting the investigation?
No, sir. And I think the Mayor Jesse Blas trial is a good example of that. We were not aware that there was going to come out in the trial an allegation that an officer had supposedly threatened one of their witnesses.
So as a result of that information coming to light, obviously in a court proceeding for a case that was done by another entity, what's the Guam Police Department done to be able to reach out to that entity to find out more information? Have you reached out to that entity to find out more information?
Yes, and that's why, like I said, we're doing a joint investigation with the AG's office.
Okay.
Because in addition to that, I believe there's other allegations that came out of another crime that may have been committed that came out during the Mayor Jesse Blas trial.
Okay. Yeah, I've got other questions, but I want to be able to now share time for any of my colleagues that may have information or some questions that I'll start with. First of all, I want to recognize, thank you, Senator Tenorio, for being here too as well. But ma'am, I'm sorry you came in, so I'm going to go down by the order of the people that came in. So Senator Joanne Brown, if you've got any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you too to the Guam Police Department. I think overall, certainly, while Chief, you're not able to get into the details, I guess I'm sure you're very much aware of the public concern and expectation for the Guam Police Department. You know, I'm sure we'll have to wait through the outcome of these investigations because allegations, attacks, accusations can always be made, but of course they need to be verified and proven. It's a difficult position to be when someone makes an allegation against you, especially when you're in a position of high regard and high responsibility in this community, as we expect of law enforcement. And because of these recent cases that have come to light, as you mentioned, because of ongoing investigations that are happening at the federal level and some things that have come up obviously at the local level, there's a sense of apprehension. I feel it. I think other members of our community you know, are feeling a little bit of discomfort in whether or not they have that level of confidence in the Guam Police Department. And we always know there's always a few apples in the barrel. I mean, I've run a few agencies. You have the current responsibility of running GPD. I don't know why it always turns out that way. It just does. Sometimes the best of intent people have, and you know they know what the rules are and the requirements are. They know the standard and the oath that they've taken to serve the public. And for whatever reason, you know, they go down the wrong road. And you're in the tough position of being in charge to have to publicly answer for that process. But I guess that's where the concern is. As the time is going on over the last few months, as these issues are coming to light, you know, we're just sensing concern because we're finding out it's not just limited maybe to one. It's not just be limited to Guam Police. You know, we're hearing it may affect the marshals. Obviously, we've seen in recent years what has happened at Department of Corrections. And it's incidences like that that really, you know, make us take pause and wonder, and then what do we need to do to ensure moving forward that there is that type of review and that type of accountability in law enforcement because of the powers that you have. You know, you have more power right now. I mean, we're here for the hearing, but, you know, the work that you do in GPD can affect people's personal freedom. You can pull us over, you know, you don't have your registration, you're speeding, whatever the case may be. I mean, people, even though that's not the biggest offense in the world you could make, but, you know, people get apprehensive about that sort of thing. What are you doing now with regards to Guam Police, perhaps with your own men and women in uniform, to address these issues towards them, maybe not these specific cases, but just to ensure that, you know, the other officers of the Guam Police Department are doing what they need to do and doing it responsibly, so that there is that sense of community confidence, because we can't depend on you. Who do we depend on? You know, you are the law enforcement for the island, and we would hate to see or think, and that's the worst part, is anyone who is in such a position of power to abuse their authority or misuse their authority on you know, residents in our community. So I just want to know, I'm sure you're concerned about it. What steps are you taking now at the Guam Police, as the chief of the Guam Police right now, to maybe address that among your troops, so to speak, so that that confidence can be, I mean, you know, it's got to be earned back, but how do we get that confidence back?
Senator, you know, law enforcement officers in general are always held to a higher standard because we take an oath to uphold the law. And not too many people have to take an oath to uphold the law. I mean, we hire janitors, we hire clerks, you know, we hire different positions in government and even throughout maybe even the private sector. But we expect more from law enforcement officers because they raise their right hand and they take an oath, they put a badge over their chest because they're sworn to protect the community, but more importantly, they swore to uphold the laws. And that's why there's a higher standard that people talk of and the community expects from its law enforcement officers. So what are we doing? You know, we just like anything else in life, we must constantly remind our people and our employees, our officers especially, that they have an oath, a duty to protect our island. Not only is it found in law, but it's found in their code of ethics, and they're bound by it, by that oath that they took when they first joined the Guam Police Department. For myself, that was 32 years ago. And so, you know, maybe it's time that we just sit down as staff officers and go back and rehash our code of ethics, break it down one by one and say, look, you know, this is what we swore to do. This is the oath that we took. But I like to also say that the few bad apples that supposedly are floating within the Guam Police Department, which we're trying to weed out, of course, like any other agency, is not representative of the entire police department. I have many fine men and women who come in and day out and take that oath seriously. And I applaud them every day because they are true to their word, they are true to their oath, and they are true to the code of ethics. And I thank them every day. And I will thank them again today for protecting our island because we are Guam's first line of defense here.
Chief, is there a process if citizens have complaints against officers? Because I've had the opportunity at the port to oversee port police. Well, I've seen and heard examples of some cases where individuals have abused, who are in that position of authority, have abused their authority. And sometimes people that are victimized by it don't report it because they fear that. By virtue of the fact of the power and authority that an officer has, they fear that. What mechanism does the public have if they have concerns or they feel they've been mistreated or not treated properly by a police or police officers? What avenue do they have to report that, to bring that to your attention, to those of you that are in a responsible position to review and address it? I understand people can get frustrated, they can get upset about something, and it's very easy to make accusations. It's as easy as talking to you. People can make an accusation, and it can have tremendous effect on someone's career because of the role and responsibilities that you have. But what avenue is there? Because I know I heard it was back, I don't know, the 13th or 14th Guam legislature, that the legislature actually convened a special committee to oversee and investigate law enforcement here on Guam, because I guess activities at that time rose to a level where they felt a need to do so. How do you address that? How do you... For me, sometimes I think I'm never going to get surprised about somebody, you know? I think I've been around like you. I started 33 years ago, and I think, oh, I've heard it all, I've seen it all, nothing's going to faze me anymore. And then sure enough, something happens that raises my eyebrow and has me really wondering, you know, scratching my head, going, wow, what happened here? What avenue does the public have, if you can make us and them aware of what avenue do they have if they have concerns about any type of abuse? Because there are, we know. It just, I don't know if it's just the percentage that always turns up, as we said, those few bad apples that are floating out there, but they're out there. And some of them are in very important, responsible positions in this government. I mean, you mentioned about the gambling. That's become to light in recent months that, you know, I'm hearing is, you know, has spread through all law enforcement, which kind of concerns me. Be it the airport, GPD, the port, or I don't know if it's going on the marshals, other things happening with the marshals, but you know, those things where we know individuals that have responsibility, they're on their working hours and they have time to engage in this kind of nonsense that they know is not just improper, but in some cases downright illegal. They're helping facilitate criminal activity. So what avenue does the public have to bring these issues to light or to your attention so that if appropriate corrective action needs to be taken, that it can be taken and there's a means of evaluating and determine is there legitimacy to it? And does appropriate action need to be taken against, you know, a public official, be it a police officer who might be using and abusing their authority? Because some people get sedentary after a while. They've been running the show, and
Right.
you know, sometimes even within organizations, people build their own little kingdoms. Everyone thinks the politics is all here or at this higher level. Politics exists in every organization, and you have many people that have been there for many, many years. Some of them have amassed their ability to influence and control. Directors, chiefs come and go. They just wait for us to go out the door. So I just want to ask, what avenue do you have, and what ability do you have in your own operations for these issues to come to light and be properly addressed?
Senator, so again, like I stated earlier, we have an internal affairs section, and anybody that feels that they have a complaint against a police officer, again, whether it's a violation of a rule or regulation, or even rises to the level of a criminal act, we have the internal affairs section, and should we determine that the violation is criminal and administrative, and usually if it's criminal, then it's going to be administrative as well. Then we open parallel investigations. We have a criminal investigation ongoing and an internal affairs administrative investigation. But how can you report it? Well, again, like I said, there's coming forward to the internal affairs section, or as Senator Blas alluded to, maybe all you have to do is call Crime Stoppers. The other way is that you may just report it directly to a police officer. Police officers have a duty under Title 10, Chapter 77, if they receive credible information regarding acts committed by police officers, that they must report that within 48 hours to the chief of police. So there are many different ways that people can come forward, and we welcome people to come forward because, like you said, we don't sometimes always know who the bad apples are, but if we can work together as a community, let me know who they are so that we can help to try and weed these bad apples out, because I don't want these bad apples to be representative of the Guam Police Department, because there's too many good officers in this department, and those should be representative of who we are.
Thank you very much, Chief, and thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and certainly, I guess, as we'll go along if there are other questions later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Senator Moylan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Chief, it just, you have a position on the post, is that correct? The Peace Officer Standard and Training, the Post Commission. Do you maintain a position on that?
Yes, sir. I'm currently still the chairman of the Post Commission.
Okay. Can you give us just a brief update on the status of fulfilling the education requirements and the physical fitness requirements as required by the post?
Yes, sir. So with regards to overall with the post commission, for the physical fitness requirement, the post body voted to withhold or temporarily suspend the PFQT because it was supposed to be done by December 2020. But because of the pandemic, of course, we voted as a body to suspend that until December of 2021. So by December 2021, all members of the post shall ensure that their members from the different law enforcement agencies meet those PFQT requirements. With regards to the education, I think what we're doing right now is that there's a standard, of course, that's established by post, and so most of us hold academies that meet those minimum requirements as outlined in the post commission rules and regulations and the law.
Okay, thank you. Also on that, oh, you mentioned your numbers in manpower, right? And I forget now, did you also mention on how many you're expecting to retire within this year? Do you have an idea of the retirees that are considering to retire?
I only maybe have about three people who have submitted their intent to retire. Those are 2 police officers and 1 statistician.
Okay. We know that your shortfalls as well with your officers and the need for, you want 525 and you're currently not even at 300. But there's also some, with the post commission, there's also some discrepancy in different peace officers regards to pay scale and retaining peace officers from going from maintaining in your agency, like GPD or like Customs as well. Has the post commission addressed this? And are there plans to help alleviate that problem in order that these agencies with peace officers can maintain their personnel that they paid for to get trained in their agency? Has the post commission addressed this issue?
Yes. So I'm glad you brought that up, Senator Moylan. So I have Dr. Richard Fee, who I brought in as a special projects coordinator last year. And one of the things that he's been trying to work on with the post commission, and Dr. Fee, let me just give you a little bit of background. Dr. Fee actually came from the courts before, and he was very successful in implementing the post requirements amongst the law enforcement members of the Superior Court or the courts of Guam, and that included all of the marshals, the marshal reserves, the probation, and all of the probation officers. And so one of the things that we're looking at with Dr. Fee is what's called the LMS, or the Learning Management System. And what that is that really it's the electronic or digitizing of all of our training records, so that we know electronically who has met all the requirements and who's lacking the requirements. It's a successful system that's being actually used by the Port Authority Police and the Airport Police, and I think also at the courts. So we're trying to, as a post commission, modernize and use one system as an approach to the whole of the post commission, as opposed to being splintered. So yeah, one of the things that Dr. Fee has been looking at is the entry-level pay across the board for all police officer ones. And I never realized this, but there's actually some really big disparities amongst pay across entry-level. A corrections officer 1, a police officer 1 at the Guam Police versus a police officer 1 at the Port Police. I think there's a difference of about $3 in that entry level, and so that's a big disparity. And then of course, we talk about losing officers to the federal government. I believe just this last couple months or this last month, I've I have an officer that's leaving me who's been as a police officer one for 20 years. And he's hanging up his hat after 20 years as a police officer one, and he's moving on to, I believe, a federal agency, Customs and Border Protection. And so, as a local government, it is hard to compete against the federal government. Their pockets are deeper. But, we look at different ways that we can recruit and retain our employees. I've said this before. We believe we have a basic understanding of why we lose our officers. One of the most common theories is that they're leaving because they get a better pay at the federal level. And, that may be a correct assumption and probably is the most common assumption that we make. What I've done, though, to kind of get a better understanding of why people leave the Guam Police Department. And let me preface that with, since I took over as chief, I've lost 44 police officers, either to retirement, mostly to resignation. Now, I hired 29, but I lost 44. So as you can see, there's no net gain to any of the hiring that we're doing. And so what I've done is I asked the School of Business and Public Administration, Dr. Annette Santos, and I'm currently working with Dr. Rivera, and I believe Dr. McNitch may also be involved. And we're doing an exit survey study. And we're asking all these former police officers who have left the Guam Police Department to answer this exit survey developed by Dr. Rivera's class so that we can have a better understanding of why police officers are leaving the Guam Police Department. I started, before the cycle of 24, I started with 29. I am down to probably 20 of those left. So 1/3 or 33% of those people have left me already. And they haven't been on the road for no more than a year yet. So the anniversary of their first year is coming up, and of that 29 that I started, 1/3 have gone already. So it's very disheartening. We put a lot of money, but we put a lot of work into getting officers trained. And unfortunately, they leave for a variety of reasons. And that's what I'm trying to have a better understanding of, is why are my people leaving?
I appreciate that Dr. Fee is working with you and that the Post Commission is part of this and aggressively looking at it. I also like to offer my assistance to serve that so we can help maintain, because that's very disturbing. As you said, 1/3 within a year have already left mostly because of pay situations. So I look forward to working with you on that, Chief, and giving you my support.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Yes,
you
sir.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. Senator Ada, first off, before you start, I want to also acknowledge the president of Senator Sabina Parrish. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. Senator Ada, please.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Chief, welcome to all of you. Major Chong, Major Kiriwa, Ms. Flores, thank you for being here. Chief, you were mentioning earlier with the discussions with the Vice Chair about the Jesse Blas, Mark Mayo case, and I do recall that back then. And I know there was a lot of allegations pointed to a lot of individuals and a whole slew of investigations. What I didn't hear too much about was the deputy director then, who was, I believe, Mr. Joey Terlahi. Was he arrested for any official misconduct with the case up at DOC?
At where, sir?
At Department of Corrections.
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah.
So there was no arrest for official misconduct or the kidnapping or the holding of that individual that was in the court case going on with Jesse Blas?
So that's what I was talking about earlier,
Right.
sir, is this joint investigation that we're doing with the AGs. We're folding all of that into the investigation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we just keep it at that then, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, Chief, you were mentioning about individuals that have a complaint against an officer. They can go to internal affairs.
Yes, sir.
What is the turnaround time for internal affairs to investigate a complaint against an officer or that's filed by the public or an investigation against any officer?
Sir, generally the turnaround time is 90 days. And that 90 day is based on the current personnel rules and regulations, which allow a department head this 90-day period to impose adverse action should the department go down that route of adverse action. And of course, adverse action is suspension, demotion, or termination.
I see. So how many cases do you have currently open in internal affairs? Or do you have a large number of cases, or are you?
I don't have that number, sir. I can definitely work with my staff to get that number.
Okay. So, and how many officers in internal affairs are investigating cases on an ongoing basis?
I have 3 internal affairs investigators and 1 supervisor.
So you got 4 people. Well, actually 3 investigators, right? So, are you adequately staffed in IA to handle the investigations and the caseload that comes in through IA?
So throughout the department, we're not adequately staffed because of a shortage. And so, we sometimes have to make sacrifices with our personnel. So I would sacrifice assignments at internal affairs in lieu of making sure that I put more officers on patrol or at CID, because that's where I think our focus should be at. Not to say that internal affairs investigations are not important, but when we look at the bigger scheme of things and the bigger picture, I think, we should focus our attention on the needs of the community.
I see. So have any of the investigations or any of the cases have gone over the 90-day period where you're supposed to take action upon an officer?
So usually what I do is, as the case progresses, I will get at least like a 20-day or 30-day update. And so by the 20th or 30th day, we have sufficient facts to determine whether or not this case is going to turn into an adverse action. And because if it's going to turn into an adverse action, then of course I have to make sure that I stay within the parameters of that 90-day rule. If we determine that it's not going to lead to an adverse action, I'll give you an example: operating vehicles. So that's the term that we use when officers are involved in a traffic crash. So, if the officer was involved in maybe a minor fender bender, right? He reversed into a guardrail or something, or they run over a pothole and they damage a tire. It's still reported, and it's still an operating vehicles type of case. But, I look at it and I say, well, this is not going to rise to the level of an adverse action. So we do what's called a command referral, and we send it down back to the command to administer discipline at their level. And because you got to remember, in management, sometimes discipline is best and more effective at the lowest possible level. And so we let our commanders handle discipline in certain situations.
So what happens in the process of an IA investigation where you start the process, and then where does it go from there?
Internal affairs cases.
Yes.
So again, like I said, I determine, and that's a heavy burden. One single person, I determine whether or not it's going to turn into an adverse action case involving suspension, termination, or demotion. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank
That's
you,
all I
Mr.
have right now.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Torres.
Hafa Chief and members of the Guam Police Department. We fully appreciate that you do the best with what you have. And we can appreciate too that, especially in these times, being a law enforcement officer is probably one of the hardest jobs around in terms of the threats in the community, the access to weapons that people have right now and the like. You mentioned, Chief, one of the main challenges you have is that oftentimes the officers that you train end up leaving you, so you lose that institutional knowledge and that expertise. Would you say that that is one of the circumstances that may prevent you and your agency from performing to your law enforcement duties to the utmost of your abilities?
I don't think it's necessarily a hindrance, Senator Torres. We are short-staffed, and as short-staffed as we are, we always remind our officers that being short-staffed is not a justification to cut corners. Being short-staffed is not a justification to usurp the law. We have a duty to uphold that law, and we have a duty to provide the best service that we can to the community, because in times of need, the only people you call that you're going to need at 2 o'clock in the morning is a police officer. And that's the inherent duty of police officers. I mean, who are you going to call at 2 o'clock in the morning when you're dealing with the mental health crisis? A person, and that's a common thing. We have people with mental health disabilities, don't take their meds, and they start to act out at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and guess what? Guam Behavioral Health is not open. Only the Guam Police is open. And we are those people that will respond, and we take as much training as we can, and we take all our knowledge based on our training, and we apply it the best we can. Yeah. But it's never an excuse to cut corners. We must continue to do what we need to do.
I appreciate also that you mentioned that with everything else, serving the community really is the priority. But with that, I want to ask, because it all also bleeds into perceptions, right, of tasks that are not completed and the like. What would you say, though, if we were to consider the status of cold cases, for example, unresolved crimes? I guess it has to do with internal investigations. Or if we were to ask you about priorities with the war on drugs or things like that, what assurances can you give people, or what can you comment about how you prioritize to close all those types of loose ends, like with the criminal cases that are unsolved, or even with tips on drugs that people aren't sure where they went? How do you reconcile that, like, with the public?
It's not unusual that I would get emails from our constituents, or the people in the public, that they've been waiting for their case to be resolved. And so we assign that, of course, to our criminal investigation division, and depending on priority, we do make the time to fit their cases in. I remember a time, unfortunately, we were trying to get back to that place in time where there was a sufficient number of personnel. And, I remember a time when I was an investigator at CIS, Criminal Investigation Section, and just CIS alone had over 20. I think we had 24 investigators at the time. We used to have Senator Frank Blas Jr. in the 7th floor at SIS, the narcotics, vice. I mean, we used to have a vice section, we used to have vice, narcotics, and there's another section that was up there in the 7th floor, but those days are gone, and we worked diligently to get the staffing pattern back up to that level, and we're waiting for this next group of officers in training to graduate in July, because what that does is that at least with the last training cycle and this current training cycle, we now have the ability to move more officers around to the specialized sections, so that they can work on those cases that we see on social media, we hear about from our constituents. We hear emails from people saying, I have a case that's been ongoing for 8, 9, 10 months, and we understand. But unfortunately, when a homicide comes up, of course, those impact the community, not just the victim and the family, but impacts the community because of this fear that a homicide has been committed and how safe are we. So, of course, that takes precedence over, the theft of, a bush cutter or a lawnmower, things of the like. I used to run the unsolved homicide task force myself, and I would love to put an unsolved homicide task force together, but we don't have that. It's not a luxury. It's something that we need to do, but we don't have the numbers to do that.
I want to ask one last question, Chief, and I really appreciate your answers. We always think about what we can do to deter criminals from being nurtured and fostered, right? How do you influence the community so that you don't have a repeated pattern or escalating pattern of crimes in the community? And one of the concerns that was recently brought to my attention is the proliferation of adolescent gangs on Guam, and how there's this growing culture of gangs, as kids are displaced or just don't really have many options, or even the support network of the family that we once had. Is that an area also of concern or focus, or is there something that you believe we can collectively as a community do to address that issue?
Yes. Senator, so I believe in the concept that, if you want to prevent crime, you need to work with people before they get into crime. And so the legislature, at least I believe the 35th and the 36th, they provided what's called the Safe Schools Initiative funding. And so we're really putting that money to good use. And so what you're going to see is we're purchasing the material for something called Project U, the letter U. And it's an initiative led by the Juvenile Investigation Section. And so one of the things that we're working on right now is we're partnered with the Thrive Coalition in Deredo under Westcare Pacific, and also Manielo. I had a meeting with Ms. Samantha Taitano from Manielo, and along with other partners in the community like Guam, Juvenile Probation Office, DYA, and the Office of the Attorney General's Family Division. We're partnering up, and we're having our first meeting on March 22nd to discuss a summer youth program. And so, that's some of the initiatives that we're working on that's more proactive, as opposed to being punitive in nature by just locking these kids up and putting them at DYA. I don't think that's where we need to go with our youth. If we want to keep them out of gangs, then we need to find something to keep them busy. And that's why we've had many different programs like Fade Away from Violence. I was very excited and I couldn't stop talking about it last year, but we actually revived our junior police cadet program. And we were supposed to have this real, big display with our police cadets in May. But of course, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, things didn't work out the way we landed. But we're slowly starting to get back into our engagement with our community, our neighborhood watch programs, but also our engagement with the youth along the lines of, keeping them out of trouble.
I'm so glad to hear that, Chief. And, there is hope when one of my grandkids tells me he wants to be a police officer. So obviously you've made a good impression on them, and hopefully these types of programs can take hold, and collectively, we can develop them with you. But thank you very much for your answers. It's very informative.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Senator Teitigui.
Sidus Masi, Vice Chair, for the opportunity. Hafa and good evening to you, Chief Ignacio, Major Chong, and Major Kirigua, as well as Bert. It's good to see you, Bert. We go back a ways. Anyways, I greatly appreciate all the information you're providing. I know there's some information you might not be able to tell us, but so I'll be treading lightly in that area. And some of the information that you'll get those numbers to us later on. I greatly appreciate it. It'd be sent to all of us senators at the same time. You know, when you, Chief, when you talked about Secret Service, I always think of the President's Men, you know, Secret Service. Are you actually referring to the FBI? Or it's
No.
a separate group?
No, ma'am. So yeah, I think that's, you're right. Most people think of the Secret Service as the people that protect the president.
Right.
But the Secret Service is charged, and they do have law enforcement investigative, and they do conduct criminal activities, investigations. So one of the more common things that they engage in is with like counterfeit currency. That's really what they're known for, is investigating counterfeit currency.
And so the FBI is totally different too, then?
Right.
And they're all federal, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the, I guess they're, what do they call the drug enforcement on the federal side?
The DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency.
Right. And
Yeah.
they work very closely with the GPD, am I correct, and other agencies?
Yes, and actually, Senator, so we have what's called a TFO, Task Force Officers.
Okay.
And so currently we have task force officers at HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigations, ATF, that's the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Bureau, and I'm sorry, the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, and the U.S. Marshals Task Force. So we're very spread out with the federal agencies because there's a lot of value in working together collaboratively and collectively to fight crime.
So this, you know, that brings me up to a question I had with regards to, you know, it was mentioned in the media last year in February 2020 that GPD created a new task force. And so this was in 2020. It was in the media report in February. And then the Lieutenant Governor mentioned that this is not the Mandanya, you know, they haven't even put a name to it yet. So since it was, and I know COVID has stopped a lot of the good work that you want to initiate going through, but what is the focus of this new task force? And does it mirror the role expected earlier of the group of the Mandanya Task Force?
No, ma'am. So that task force was initially formed to address some of the more pressing crimes in the community, whether it be robberies, whether it be theft, and they were like I would say a general purpose task force. So if narcotics needed help with investigations, we could shift them over that way. If patrol had an ongoing case, you know, a suspect fled the scene of a crime, and they were on duty, they would go and provide support to patrol. You know, unfortunately, like you said, that task force doesn't exist anymore because we initially folded them into the COVID operations response, and so yeah, they technically don't exist right now. Something that we can go back and revisit. It was a multi-agency task force is what it was. But, you know, unfortunately, because everybody's short and because of the COVID operations, most of the agencies pulled their personnel back to their departments.
So the one that you mentioned were Homeland, Federal Bureau, or I guess FBI is there, ATF, DEA, and as well as, I think this was Marshals. That's a group. What's the name of this group?
No, they're just called TFOs, Task Force Officers. They're police officers who are assigned to these various federal agencies under a Memorandum of Understanding, an MOU.
When was that put together?
Oh, these things have been ongoing
Okay.
for many years.
That's why my next question is, what is the status of the Community Police Review Commission? You remember that? I mean, you've been there for 33 years. I know Manny Chong knows it.
Yes.
And remember that group that was put together? When was the last time this commission was active? And please state your name for the record, too.
Okay, Major Andrew Kirigua. The last time the Guam Police Department spoke about this commission was with Senator Nelson. I believe it was in 2018. She asked a question about it, or even before then, maybe even 2016 or 2017. But the Civilian Volunteer Police Review Commission had never started a meeting back up again. They themselves discontinued any meetings because of their inability to create and develop and pass administrative rules. So the police department, by law, is supposed to support them administratively, but they don't meet. So we have not had any dealings with that commission.
Was this created by law, the commission?
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
it is.
Yes, it is.
It is on books.
Yes.
Okay.
I
So yeah,
I
go
think
ahead.
I think there have been at least 2 or 3 attempts to get this commission started, but it's just never gotten off the ground.
Chief, can you explain what this this commission does and who it's made up of? Or Major Kidigwa might know. 'Cause he's been, yeah. Either or. Yeah.
I don't remember in detail, ma'am,
Okay.
but I do know that I believe there were certain attorneys that were chairing those commissions over several years. But like I said, the previous attorney, the last one, I can't remember who it was, declined to have any more meetings. And that's part of some of the research that I did when the question was asked by Senator Nelson about the status of that commission. I did some research. I have all the documentation. It's just going to take me some time to provide.
We do have a secretary who was at one time actively involved in that commission, at least to take notes and record the meetings. I can get back to you on that.
Thank you.
I know she has the notes on when they actually had a last meeting, and it was way before 2018. Yeah. And like I said, there have been multiple attempts to get this commission started, appointing members, and there's a specific composition of who the members are.
Yeah, and I know that, if I'm not mistaken, it's not all, those who are sitting on this commission is not necessarily in the police force. It's other areas in the community of people sitting down there, so you kind of got a really good grasp of different ideas and comments.
I remember at one time there was I believe a mayor that was sitting on this commission.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it was.
Okay.
I forget which mayor. I don't want to name a mayor and get it wrong. But
No worries.
I can definitely get you
Yeah,
the last members who
Right.
composed this commission when at least the last official meeting that they had. Because I've seen that come across my desk at one time or another.
Yeah, let's look into that. I think it's been long enough. I know, like, again, I understand COVID has put a lot of things, on the back burner on moving forward, so I appreciate that. Separate from the GPD's internal affairs section, is there an external and independent body authorized to review allegations of police misconduct?
That would be that commission.
That's what I thought. Okay, so this commission really needs to be up and going. So if there's anything we can do to help assist you, let me know, okay? So I'm looking forward to hearing what's the status of that. Okay, Chief, it was also in the media that you reopened the case for the Jerry restaurant case, and I believe the spokesperson for the GPD first went out saying that this had nothing to do with DWI, a DUI. And then later on, we found out that this individual was never tested to be determined. I really appreciate it, Chief, stepping up to the plate and relaunching this investigation, because there's just so many unanswered questions, people involved, and I think you might be able to answer this question, is who was in the vehicles? Because in the event you're doing any kind of investigation, if somebody is caught robbing a house and they pick them up and there's, pictures in the paper with this little, tag there or label. And so we all know that this person was picked up, right? So in this particular circumstances, why did the police department hold back the names of those individuals in the vehicle?
We don't provide names of witnesses, and in this case, because they were identified as occupants, so they're also witnesses to the crash. So we don't provide names. What you're talking about is when people get arrested, they're placed in the police activity blotter, and so that is public information as to who was arrested. Nobody was arrested in this case, and so therefore their name, of course, was not published because we give citations in traffic crashes day in and day out, but that's not part of the police activity blotter.
And that's public information, correct? I mean, if you have a citation of an individual who pulled over for speeding or something like that, it's not like these tickets are hidden from anybody
Right,
with the name on it.
Yeah, that's what I mean, though. There was no DWI arrest.
Well, even on speeding, even a speeding ticket, right? I mean, your documentation is not like private or hidden from the public to find out. I mean, we can really look through these documents and see, okay, this individual.
So Senator, I think what I can do in the interest of your question,
Sure.
let me at least confer with the AG's office if whether or not that's publicly disclosable information as to who the operator of the vehicle was.
Yes.
Only because in my many years of experience, I've never seen the names of a speeder, the name of a person who didn't wear a seatbelt, the Title 16, the traffic violations. I've never seen their name published publicly in any forum, whether it be in news media, print media, or whatever. And so, I'd like to, if I may kindly ask, to err on the side of caution before, I publicly announce the name of the operator.
Okay, no problem. I should agree. I don't want to get you in trouble in any way.
Yes, ma'am.
But for an example, if I were to witness something like a traffic citation that was given to an individual who I knew was speeding down the road, right? And I'm like, oh, good, GPD caught him, check the community there. And then a ticket was given. And then, of course, he was let go. Now, if I were to call GPD and ask, at this time at 3:45 on right next to the old Joe and Flo's, there was a citation that was given. Can you give me the name of that individual? You don't know about that either?
Yeah.
Okay, check that out for me, okay?
Right.
I'd
Because those are traffic violations.
Yeah.
And they're civil violations.
Okay, because media usually gets some of that information. The media, if they ask, they usually can get that. So I figured, okay, it could be public information. So holding the names of individuals who were given a citation, I don't see anything in the law that prohibits the name given of somebody who got a citation, whether it's speeding or illegal parking. So I appreciate if you can get me that information on that, Chief. And by the way, since we're here and there's a lot of people watching from what I gather, what is the number to Crime Stoppers?
472-8911. I'm
Again?
sorry, no.
Wait.
472-4357?
What's-
Yeah. Major Manu will have it real
Major
soon.
Chong? Do you?
Yeah. I think it's 472 help.
It's 472 help.
472 help? Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Let me see what that converts to.
Okay, I think that's it. That's all I have for now. Thank you so much. And looking forward to those answers to my questions, okay?
Thank you, Senator.
Está. Okay.
Senator Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the chief and the police officers on the panel for being here today. I think my colleagues have asked really good questions. I just wanted to follow up on a couple of them. So in regards to growing the capacity of police officers, I heard you mention that you seem to have a net loss of police officers coming into the force, and I'm glad to hear that you're trying to troubleshoot the problem, or at least working with UOG to to try to identify what the issues are. So I guess the question might be premature, but maybe you might have some inkling as to, why you're having such an exodus, I guess, from the police force. Is that pretty much due to retirement, or is it newcomers, new officers coming in, and they basically resign after a certain period of time?
Yeah, the exodus is primarily due to resignations. They're moving on to other jobs, and primarily they're moving on to the federal government side. I think the most popular one that comes to mind is CBP, Customs and Border Protection.
Okay. So, would you estimate it's because of the benefits and the pay?
Well, as we look at their pay scale, of course, we see that they offer a better salary than the entry-level salary that they're making. So they come in right around, I think, $13 plus an hour, entry level into the Guam Police Department. And so, they're moving on to much higher salaries in Customs and Border Protection when they graduate from that academy.
Okay, thank you. And in regards to internal affairs, so you'd mentioned earlier about the task force, the work task force, and there's a memorandum of agreement in regards to some of your officers being designated in the various federal agencies. Is there reciprocity as far as federal agents being detailed to help and assist as an external, to help with external audits or internal audits?
Not that I'm aware of. We don't necessarily have federal agents coming over to the Guam Police Department to work with our investigations. Most of it is primarily vice versa. But I think in discussions with one of the federal agencies recently, we discussed that possibility of maybe even having one of their federal agents coming and working with our agents in our criminal investigation section. So, we're open to that possibility, but, we work with them primarily. We assign our officers to their office. And, one of the things that the reasons we do that also is what we call the asset forfeiture sharing. So we reap the benefits of being involved in federal investigations because of the asset forfeiture. So we sometimes receive upwards of like $400,000 or $500,000 annually that's deposited into our account, the asset forfeiture account. And we use that for many varied purposes. We buy vehicles, we train our personnel, we buy equipment, things that we sometimes don't have the resources to do with our general fund appropriations. So there's a lot of benefit to participating in these task forces.
Thank you for that response. I mean, I'm interested in, I think it's, we're such a small community, and I think sometimes it's important to bring in outside people with fresh perspectives to assist with some of the investigations, specifically with the internal affairs. I think that might be something worthwhile to investigate, but
Yes,
I'm
sir.
interested to know if there's any, legalities or things that need to be amended, from as a legislator. I'm wondering if there's anything that needs to be changed in the law to allow for something like that, or is it more a matter of creating a memorandum of agreement?
Okay, yeah, I'm not very familiar with with bringing in for internal affairs investigation. We do sometimes work with other partners in the local law enforcement community, and so it's not uncommon for the Guam Police Department, internal affairs, to go and conduct internal affairs investigations. We've done it for the Department of Corrections. we've actually been called in to assist in their investigations. Right.
Thank you. The other thing is, to what extent does the Guam Police Department have mental health support for their staff?
So the Guam Police Department does have a thriving program, federally funded. It's called the LEMWA, Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Act. And this is a federal grant that provided us $100,000 to kickstart this program. And so what it is that we work with the Guam Behavioral Health, and we have what's called a peer support group that is in place now. And they've received extensive training from Guam Behavioral Health and even from another off-island provider. And they've been very instrumental in responding to the mental health needs of our officers. So I'll give you an example. When we had the beheading of that individual down in Santa Rita, that's a very traumatic event for anybody, and more so traumatic for the first responders, our police officers, who have to go in there and record evidence with the body still there at the scene, we know a beheaded body, and that's a very traumatic experience. So what we do is we send the officers to what's called a critical incident stress debriefing. And so I remember about less than a week after that incident, we brought in mental health professionals from Guam Behavioral Health, along with our peer support group, and we had them do a debriefing of our officers that were at the scene of that beheading. Just to make sure that they don't take these stressors home, because that's a lot of heavy burden to carry.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Perez. Okay, Chief, I got some questions and then we're going to go around again. And thank you. Great, as far as, my colleagues asking some questions, because they knocked out some of the questions I had too, okay, with this as well. So, you mentioned earlier that you were, and I'm glad, and yes, there is a strict code of ethics that we have to adhere to, and it's pounded into us, it's pounded into you and us, almost daily when you go to training. But I'm looking at the room here, and you guys represent probably close to, I hate to say this because Manny, he's gonna date your age. You got close to 100 years of experience, okay, sitting right there. Bert, you're included, okay. So, but what you learned back in the heydays of when we were in the police academy can quickly get lost over the years, and especially with all the stressors and the strains that you have to go through in the police department. Do you have a refresher training curriculum just so that you can remind the police officers, your officers, of what first off, what your basic responsibilities are? I know we do this for advance and as far as getting new skills, but is there a program that provides, the basics, again, going back to the basics?
No, sir. So I think when we talk about refresher training as far as, our values and our ethics and the integrity of maintaining yourself as an officer, it kind of reminded me that, I don't know about you, but I recently, as a appointed official, Monday, I took that ethics training. And so, that's a very good question. And maybe it is time for us as staff officers, and I'm glad I have my command staff here. And, like you said, it's been 30 years maybe since we opened up that code of ethics and actually read it again. It's probably, we only get sworn in once to this job. So, maybe, we should, I think, it's a good question that maybe we should start thinking about ethics, an ethics course for our officers. Like I said, it's the second time in my short 2.5 year career as a chief that I've taken the ethics course offered by the University of Guam. And so I think that's a good question, sir. And I think maybe it is high time that we develop an ethics course.
You know, and I'm looking at three fine gentlemen that can provide the course. You know, Manny and Tony and you, Steve. I worked with the three of you, and you know, above board and standard and everything, and I'm sure that you can do this. And I do this because I'm looking at your badges, okay? And what we have a tendency to do a lot of times as law enforcement is we, you know, our badge basically gets dull, you know, from constant use, and we take the time to be able to polish it back up. And maybe that's what we got to do sometimes with, you know, the things that we have to do, our code of ethics. If we polish our badge, we might as well go back and polish up our code of ethics too as well. So, you know, that's one area. One of the things that, you talked about, you know, having involved in many task forces. And yes, those were task forces that existed when I was there. But even back then, you know, the concerns that we had and that we tried to address, and which is what I'm going to ask in as far as whether it's still a concern or are you addressing it. There are obviously different training standards, okay? There are more things that you have to learn as a police officer as opposed to another person in another law enforcement entity, okay? I know there were some concerns and some whether or not those that were going to the Balea, you know, were getting the proper training necessary to become PO1s. But then, when you get past that and you're putting your task force together, has there been a study as to whether or not in these task forces, whether, you know, the training and the understanding of what their responsibilities are congruent or consistent with the training and understanding of what things are with the other agency that you're assisting in?
Yes, so generally when we put the officers through a task force, so let's say like the Secret Service, what they do is, you know, they're bound to the Secret Service guidelines, rules and regulations. And then also the Secret Service usually sends them to some sort of training. I know, I think the DEA is one of the more popular task forces that we have, where the officers actually go to a basic course to become a DEA TFO. And so, you know, we invest a lot of money. Well, the federal agency invests a lot of money in these officers, these TFOs. And so we tend to keep them there a little bit longer than usual with assignments, and we tend not to rotate them out because, you know, we want to make sure that as much as we get the most out of them as employees, that the federal agency also gets the most bang for their buck, to say the least, for the investment of time and money into building up this police officer to become a TFO for their agency.
Okay. Drug testing. When's the last time you guys did it as a police force?
I have not done one, but I am in discussion already with DOA, and we have set aside money for mandatory drug testing for our uniform personnel.
So it's safe to say that all your officers, all your uniform officers do fit the criteria for test designated position?
Yes, they all fall within the TDP. Yes,
To include your reserve officers?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so,
It's coming soon.
when was the last time there was any drug testing done in the police department? Please don't say 1994, because that's when the last
No.
time I got tested in the police department.
So the last time I was drug tested, and that was the last group that got drug tested, I was a sergeant. That was over a decade ago.
Yeah, I just did the math. It's about 25 years ago.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So I'm doing one, sir. It'll be coming down soon.
Okay, and so this is going to be your random, regularly random.
Yes, we're gonna set it in motion. Like I said, you know, we just set up the money and we deposited into DOA so that we can conduct this drug test.
Okay.
But it's still required for every new employee coming in.
Okay, yeah, that's that's understood. So, when do you plan on that?
When do we plan to have the drug testing?
Yes.
It's a coordination effort right now between myself, the Guam Police Department, and DOA. to schedule that.
So is it safe to say that right now you can say that there's a 30, you're going to meet the 30-day requirement by saying you're going to have drug testing in the police department?
You know, we don't like to say when we're doing drug testing.
Oh, but, you know, just, okay.
Yeah, but, you know, we are working towards that, you know.
Okay. No, that's good to know. You know, there's a law that basically provides that outcomes of internal affairs investigations are supposed to be posted.
Yes.
And when was the last time? I think the last time that we found any posting of an internal affairs investigation was probably back in 2015?
Yeah, I was informed that the last time anything was posted was 2011 or 2012.
Okay.
And so I'm working with Lieutenant Ron Titano and Sergeant Mike Elliott from Internal Affairs. And we are going through those numbers now, and we're going through all the internal affairs cases. So, Senator, if you can kindly give me some time, and we'll get that up on our website. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's why we're going to have this, you know, let's find a way to help you guys. Okay,
Yes, sir.
and to be able to comply to a lot of stuff that you have. Okay? I'm going to get into some specific events, but, you know, before I start to do that, if there's any questions first by any of the colleagues. Senator Blas. Second round of questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I did want to follow up because I am finding, and a little much to my concern, about the lack of drug testing that has occurred. And we certainly understand the Attorney General's opinion with regards to that. But what is the reason? I mean, we have a serious drug problem here on Guam. I think probably you know more of that than the rest of us in the line of work that you and your officers do. Why has there not been drug testing on a consistent basis for designated positions, and which obviously all your officers fall into? Why is it? It's not a very complicated process. Because I'm finding out over the last few years there's been almost no drug testing except if an incident or accident happens that would trigger that, which is an after-the-fact issue rather than being proactive, and maybe more it's a mechanism to try to minimize the possibility that your officers would be taking drugs. You know, it's a deterrent. If they never know when they're going to get tested, it's the hope that they don't go down that road, which they shouldn't to begin with because they're law enforcement officers. But why is that the case? I'm a little more concerned to hear that, you know, this is maybe more than 2-3 years or longer than that there's been no consistent random drug testing within the Guam Police Department.
You know, Senator, that falls squarely on my shoulders. I have not coordinated any drug testing. And, you know, I take responsibility for that. You know, and we also lost almost a year because of the pandemic. You know, we're focused on this and not that. But as we move forward, you know, we started to go back into P-Court 3 and returning to some normalcy. It is one of the things that I did put on my personnel officer and my ASO. I said, you know, get some money, put it aside because I want to do drug testing. Because yes, I did realize that it has been many, many years, you know, that we have not done drug testing in the Guam Police Department. Major Manning got tested. I didn't get tested when Major Manning got tested. Honestly, I think I've only taken one drug test. That's when I joined the Guam Police Department. I have never fallen into that random drug test rotation. I don't know, it's just by luck or coincidence, but beyond my drug test in 1987, I can't recall another time that I've been drug tested. Yeah.
Chief, if I can add more to that. Ma'am, prior to, in defense of Chief Ignacio, prior to this, I'm Major Manny Chong, Acting Police Commander. Prior to Chief Ignacio being the chief, and it was one of the previous administrations, there was a legal opinion rendered by the Attorney General at the time that said random drug testing for the sake of looking for people is unconstitutional. Okay, that's an illegal search. You have to have reasonable suspicion to test somebody. Okay, so now because of these allegations coming out and nobody coming forward identifying a police officer, our mechanism as managers, what we're doing is that somebody in the Guam Police Department is being accused of doing drugs. Since we don't know who it is, we're going to have to test everybody. that's going to justify the drug testing that we're going to be
Yeah, I
accomplishing.
might have read that Attorney General opinion a little differently, because I understand that would apply to non-designated positions, but the designated positions can be tested at any time.
It was a
That's,
memo.
that's the Fino English that I read.
Yeah, it
and,
was a memo to the Guam Police Department, ma'am.
I understand. I'm just saying that that's my clear interpretation of the language that I read. You know, it's not a question of just going after people for the sake of going after people. I mean, we've got enough on our hands that we have to deal with. But when we have concerns, as we do, of a growing drug problem here on Guam, wanting to ensure the safety of our community, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate sometimes the gatekeepers themselves, you know, end up falling to prey and engaging in things they're not supposed to be doing, because by virtue of the work that they're doing, it accesses them to some parties in our community that are less than desirable. So I don't buy that explanation. I've heard that played around and misinterpreted publicly, that because of the AG's opinion, unless you have reasonable suspicion, you can't go around and just doing a drug test. It was very clear to me when I read it that designated positions can be tested at any time.
Understood, ma'am, but
Yeah.
we weren't in charge back then. Believe me, random drug testing is something that I want to happen on a quarterly basis, just to keep the public aware that the Guam Police Department is doing our best to make sure that our officers are on the up and up. Okay, but you know, we're starting it now. Okay, it's been you know, it should have happened earlier. However, there are certain incidents that happened that prevented us from doing that, but we're correcting it now. It's going to happen.
No, I appreciate that, but I'm beginning to wonder if these things that are left to the discretion of management is something we need to mandate. I'd hate to think that that would be the case.
No.
Just because by virtue of the work that and the line of work that you're in, you know, there has to be some sense of public confidence. And because of the growing problems, I mean, and you know more than we do the amount of impact that this has on our community, because you can draw the line of where the issue of drug use, you know, connects to the crimes and a lot of the crimes that our people are facing in our community. And what we know ourselves, I mean, just even our own sense of safety in our homes, when we leave our homes, when we're out and about, particularly what is very heart-wrenching is when we hear from our elderly people, especially some of them that may be living alone, that have tremendous apprehension of fear. Even if they hear something going on outside, they're afraid to even go outside in their yard because, you know, they're not in a position physically themselves to do anything if somebody wanted to harm them, harm their family. So I think we all know at a personal level that there's, you know, we shouldn't have to live this way. We didn't always live this way. And we're seeing that even though we have all these modern technologies and all these comforts that we have, our sense of safety in our own community is not there. Our sense of safety, when we were growing up, we could get a bicycle and ride all over the village. And I've toured many villages on my bicycle, because we were free to go out and do that as children. I couldn't imagine now allowing my child to go out and do that without, you know, my eye on them, making sure they're safe. I'm sure many parents feel that way. So we live now in a community when we have less sense of comfort of our own personal safety and the safety of our family. And then a growing distrust because of the actions of a few that make us question whether or not our law enforcement personnel that are supposed to be protecting our interests and upholding our interests in the community that we rely on, because who are we going to call? We're going to call you.
Yes.
That we don't have that sense of comfort because of things like this. I understand you know, you can say, well, we weren't there before. Well, you're here now, and the months have passed, and it's just a public expectation now. At least I certainly have it in my capacity of looking at it. I implemented drug testing, probably had it more recently just as the head of an agency to show to my own people that if I'm expecting you to do it, I'll do it too. Because we do have that drug problem. And sometimes when you end up finding out the people you least expect, you think it's something that just young people that don't, you know, are being irresponsible and engaging, you know, it's them. You know, when you have people getting close to 70 that you're worked with and you're just dumbfounded by it. But I guess my point in wanting to emphasize this, because it's not just Guam Police. I'm seeing this in other department and agencies in the government of Guam, you know, that this isn't happening. There's a very laid-back view on it for whatever reason. They can say everything else can be is prioritized, but this to me should be prioritized primarily because we're seeing the adverse consequences in our community. And you're right, that's how you're going to set the example to the public that you're doing what you need to do and that your personnel are being responsible. Because this is too long, especially for law enforcement, where the opportunity to end up having some of your officers going down this road is very easy, because who's going to check, who's going to follow up? And that's the concern. That's what I'm trying to relay. That's the concern that we're seeing and we're sensing out there in the community. So we certainly look forward to hearing how you'll proceed with that. I hope things come up good for your officers, and if not, then at least it's identifying the problem before we can correct it and moving from there. I do want to ask just quickly, Chief, because you did mention, I know you can't get into the details of the investigations that are currently happening, but which at least of these cases that are currently before us is the Guam Police Department investigating, or those cases where, because of the federal court case, perhaps your federal partners may be working with you or doing their own independent? Are they doing their own independent investigations, just so our public will have a sense of what's going on, and I'm sure at the appropriate time you will announce whatever it is you need to announce on your findings in these investigations, but just to give us an idea of what is happening and who's doing what.
So, like I spoke to earlier, Senator, we're looking into the allegations that came out during the Mark Mayo trial, the allegations that came out during the former Mayor Jesse Blas trial.
Yes.
And the allegations that are now surfacing regarding the online gambling.
Okay.
And then we're also looking into the Jerry's Kitchen crash.
Okay. So is it just the Guam Police, or are you jointly investigating with your federal partners on those cases?
So my joint investigation was with the Attorney General of Guam, his office. Again, the federal government, we're not involved in their investigations. Right.
Okay, but you may be aware that they are investigating as a result of those cases, or you're not aware, can't say?
Sometimes the federal agencies, law enforcement agencies, hold things very close to their chest, and so even trying to get information from them, because they guard their information, to make sure to protect the integrity of their case. And so, like I said, sometimes things come out during trial or during hearings that we weren't even aware of, and I think that's the case that's played out here in these cases that I talked about.
Okay, but at least the cases that you identified, GPD is involved in those cases.
Yes, with the Attorney General of Guam.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, Senator Brown. Senator Ara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, thank you again for being here. Major Chong, Major Kirwan, Ms. Bird. Vehicles. What is your total number of vehicles, both operable and inoperable?
I believe we have at least 24 operational patrol vehicles. That includes the 14 that we purchased with CARES Act funding. Those were 4 funded by the Bureau of Statistics and Plan, and 10 funded under the CARES Act. And then in June, Senator, I will be receiving a brand new fleet of at least 24 brand new Dodge Chargers. That fleet was supposed to come in January, but again, I had a meeting with the vendor, and due to COVID, they were not able to deliver these vehicles in a timely manner, and so they requested an extension, which was granted, and so we're pushed out to June. So we should be having a new fleet of vehicles by June of this year.
By June of this year, that's great to hear. I know the vehicle is just constantly on the road, and the maintenance and wear and tear on it. And when it comes to maintenance, do you have your own mechanics, or are these vehicles being purchased with maintenance care with it?
So what we're doing right now for maintenance is we do still have our mechanics that do some of the maintenance, like simple things like an oil change, repair of brakes. But we also have what's called a bumper-to-bumper contract with Cars Plus as the awarded vendor, and so they do the repair of the vehicles. So anything that's wrong with the vehicles, it's being repaired through a bumper-to-bumper coverage repair contract with Cars Plus.
I see.
Yeah.
And how about your fuel costs? How is your fuel costs being taken care of, or are you behind on fuel, or?
No, sir. We're staying on top of our fuel costs. As a matter of fact, we've realized some savings on fuel through an initiative that we implemented, which was the take-home vehicles. We kind of minimized who is allowed to take home vehicles, and we actually went across the board and tried to save some money on fuel costs. We were trying to save some money in the beginning of the fiscal year because we realized that we had a shortfall already, and so we're just trying to stay in front of it and stay on top of it.
I see. Will you be requesting from, I know the governor will be receiving an additional $661 million coming in. Will you be requesting for additional funding for vehicles and equipment again from that funding?
Yes, sir. So I've had a conversation already with Mr. Lester Carlson from BBMR. So I'm working on a list of things that I would request to be funded with this incoming money. I think one of the big ticket items that we've already discussed is our radio system. As you know, our radio system is probably over 30 years old or close to 30 years old, and it's very antiquated. So we've been having a lot of problems maintaining that system. And, we've made several attempts at procurement. And so, unfortunately, we haven't gotten very, very far since 2010. And so, I've had that discussion already, to look at some of the American Recovery Plan money, hopefully to support our radio system.
That should be able to help upgrade your system. And okay, I see. That's great. That's also great to hear. I know there's this one touchy subject here that it's been ongoing, and we spoke about it a couple of times. Stipends for police reserves. What is the update on stipends for the reserves?
Yeah. So the reserves, they're required to submit to me before the 5th of every month, the preceding month's stipend request. And so I believe we've already probably paid February, and we're already in March. If not, then February we paid soon, but we're no longer behind 2 or 3 months. There was a reserve officer who was paid for work in 2020. And that's because, unfortunately, his paperwork was lost in the shuffle of getting things to my desk. But we're no longer behind 3, 4, 5 months. We're on top of our CVPR stipends.
That's great to hear. Will you also be requesting for funding from the American Recovery Act for just to keep you updated with stipends as well, and to keep you updated?
We're actually budgeted already for stipends, so it's something that we've projected already, the cost, and we can cover that.
Okay. Yeah. So what is the process when on a stipend payment? How does it go? You said they have to turn in a report to you, the timesheet, by the 5th of the month for the previous month,
right?
And then where does it go from there?
And so what happens is that the reserve officer has a work log that they fill out. It's signed by whichever supervisor they're assigned to, at the precinct level, at the Special Operations Division level. And then that's compiled in a memorandum to me by the officer in charge of the reserve section. They send it up to me and says, 10 officers worked this month. Here's the name of the 10 officers. I sign off on that, acknowledging it, and then I send it up to my administrative services officer, and they prepare the direct payment request to the Department of Administration, and we send that document over, and then the Department of Administration processes the payment. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we've actually switched the stipends for the CVPR from a paper check version, and I think we've already gone electronic with their payments. Right? Did we go electronic? Yeah. So yeah, we've gone electronic already with their payments. So as soon as DOA receives that direct payment request, once they process it through, the reserves will see it appear in their bank accounts.
So the turnaround time from the time the officer turns in their timesheet to it getting to DOA for payment is what, about 10 days?
It's no more than a couple of weeks, sir.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. The other issue was attorney. Do you have a staff attorney?
No, sir. Unfortunately, the law allowing legal counsel for the Guam Police Department was repealed, and so I no longer have that ability to hire legal counsel for the Guam Police Department.
How important was that attorney, a staff attorney, to you and the operations that in your department?
It's critical. We deal with a lot of FOIAs, Freedom of Information Act requests. We deal with, they've been very helpful in the past when we've had legal counsel, in working with our criminal cases and that collaboration with the Attorney General's office. I've advocated, and I would love to have my own, our legal counsel within the Guam Police Department. I think we're one of the more key law enforcement agencies that should have its own legal counsel. And, I look forward to any discussion with anybody that would like to have the discussion about getting us a legal counsel.
And when was that law repealed for you to have a legal counsel on staff?
I think it
Couple
was
of years?
during Chief Suba's time, maybe? Yeah, Mr. Jim Mitchell was our last legal counsel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How many years ago was that?
long. Yeah, it's been a while.
Wow. During the Camacho administration?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess it's something then that, we can actually take a look at. I know there's probably sometimes, or, conflicts of interest between the department and the AG's office with an AG attorney, or
I'm sorry, what was this?
do you see any conflicts of interest at times with the department and having an attorney from the AG's office?
No, sir, because they're the only legal counsel that we have available.
Yeah.
And so, we honestly just have to rely on them when we need legal assistance.
But a staff attorney is your preference to
Absolutely.
help with the department? And
Yes, sir, absolutely. I would love to have a staff attorney.
okay, that's great to hear. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Tynigui.
I'm still in shock about not having an attorney in your office. This is something that we definitely going to look into, especially coming up in this budget. It's really needed, Chief. I'm sorry to hear about that. I wish I knew about this earlier coming up. But just a couple questions regarding internal affairs that you brought up earlier, and that 3 investigators sit on the internal affairs and then 1 staffer, correct?
Yeah, one sergeant, the
And
officer in charge.
Who decides who are those 3 investigators that sit on internal affairs?
Actually, most of them were there already before I got there. So, they're good officers, and so they've remained there.
So they're not rotated. It's the same people all the time?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow, okay. Is that normal in like other jurisdictions where the internal affairs is the same individuals all the time? I mean,
I'm not- yeah.
who looks after them to see if they're doing everything okay?
Well, I don't question, their integrity, but we do rotations. Actually, one of the officers is new to the division, so he's fairly new. The other officers have been there maybe about 5, 6, 7 years, maybe.
Oh, okay.
And so we do have regular rotations.
Oh, so you
and it's
do
something
rotate them?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's something I've talked about already with the officer in charge, on multiple occasions, about, providing new officers there. But because when I bring a new officer in, it allows that new officer a different perspective on the Guam Police Department, and it's a learning opportunity really more than anything. And Senator, I wanted to get back to you on the police commission that you asked about earlier.
Yes, yes,
Somebody actually WhatsApped me the answer, for lack of a better way to describe it.
Okay.
And so the commission is composed of 7 members. 3 are appointed by the governor of Guam. 2 are appointed by the Speaker of the Legislature. 1 is appointed by the Mayor's Council, and 1 is appointed by the Guam Bar Association. So it's a 7-member composition.
Thank you for that information. I'll pull up the law on that one too as well. to find out the tasks, the responsibilities that they're supposed to have as well. I'll go ahead and pull that up, unless you already have the Guam Code or the public law that created that commission.
It's set 78103A, but unfortunately they didn't, I didn't get which title, yeah. But it's
Okay.
chapter 78.
7810,
78103.
Eight?
Community, yeah.
yeah, okay.
78103.
Oh, 03. Okay, thank you, Chief.
Yeah, it's
Thank
called
you
the
for that.
Community Police Review Commission.
Okay, I'll do some research on that as well.
Yeah, it's in 10 GCA.
10 GCA.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other, sorry. Exactly. The last question I have, well, not, yeah, is to Major Chong. We're talking about drug testing. I was wondering if you happen to know if the federal side, like the Secret Service, like the FBI, if they go through any kind of random drug testing with the no cause, what does the federal side do on drug testing for their police officers?
For the task force officers?
Secret Service, FBI, the DE or the US DEA.
Okay, ma'am, I don't know what their drug testing policy is for the federal
Okay.
agencies. I couldn't tell you. I don't want to even speculate regarding
Okay,
that.
no problem. Just wondering if you happen to know,
Yeah.
because I think I read something in there on the federal side, that they do random drug testing with no reason whatsoever. If you hold a federal position in public safety, that's one of the requirements. So, yeah, I actually asked the Attorney General's office again to give me another interpretation of this, since the Attorney General that did the first one was Elizabeth Baird Anderson, I think it was.
Yes.
Well, and I'm asking this additional one, this Attorney General, the same thing, and as well as, seeking other people of authority or knowledge on this type of constitutionality, especially when it comes to public safety. But I greatly appreciate you guys being here, Major Kirigua as well, and Bert and Chief, always a pleasure to speak with you, and appreciate your answers today.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tagli. Well, and to answer the question, but then again, this question is basically 26. The answer to this is 26 years old or something like that. We were required as task force officers to be able to be subjected to drug testing. This is even before drug testing became the norm
Right.
in some places. So I'm going to safely assume that continues to be the case in this matter. Chief, I know that you had said earlier that incidents like you already talked about the online gambling. I need to talk to you about some specific incidents, and you talked very briefly, and you said that the red Jeep. I'm going to call it the red Jeep incident, the Jerry Lee restaurant incident. Okay.
Yes.
Earlier, initially, you took the stance that investigation was. I mean, the police officer did the investigation. It was done. Okay, case closed. Then you changed your mind and said that you want that reopened. Can I ask why?
Sir, I read the report. I reviewed the report, read the report, and I didn't find anything unusual. However, there's no direct information sent to me, emailed to me, related to me that says something's wrong and you need to do it. There's been, and I think Chris Barnett said it best, there's this supposition that the presence of an officer off duty leads a lot of people in the community to question whether or not this case was handled appropriately. And, when the community comes out and says, Chief, you need to look into it, just maybe dig a little bit further, I don't see any harm in doing that. And, if the community questions the integrity of the Guam Police Department, then as the chief, I think I need to step up and make sure that we either confirm what we found, or if we find differently, then we need to move forward and do what we need to do in holding people accountable. And so that's where we're going with that, is that, there's a lot of community concern, and really there's nothing directly relate to me that I'm aware of to this point, but because the concern far outweighs where we're at with this, I think it was important that we continue to maintain that trust with the community, that we are above board, and so that's why I ordered that we go ahead and look into this case a little bit further.
And please understand, okay? I mean, just even granted that I think that most individuals, unless you were up at 1:30 in the morning and you witnessed this accident yourself, but based on the photographs and everything, and I understand where the community is coming from, and as far as the concern of how this investigation,
Right.
There was something didn't match with regards to the result of the preliminary investigation and what you saw in the photographs. You got a Jeep that's trying to execute a left turn from Route 1 into Route 14. It jumps a curb, goes clear across a parking lot into a building, and it's imprudent driving.
Right. And so we're looking into that, sir.
Okay? Yeah, and I'm talking to three guys who I know. We went through the same traffic investigations course. Okay? So yeah, and I appreciate it, okay? Thank
Yes,
you
sir.
very much. And I understand that that's still an investigation that's ongoing,
Yes.
and I understand why we can't talk about the specifics, and I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Talked about this to you earlier, and let's talk about it now. The incident involving the citation for the COVID violation.
Yes, sir. So, San Augustine's funeral.
Yes, that one.
So, Senator, that citation was issued. Sorry. That citation was issued on December 14th, 2020. It was transmitted to the traffic court on February 4th, and the court appearance date is April 28th, 2021. So
Okay.
there's the defendant in this case has up to the 28th of April to properly adjudicate this citation.
Okay, so it happened on December. Citation was issued in December what?
December 14th,
And it was transmitted to to the courts when?
February 4th.
That's almost 50 days?
Yeah, about. But because the adjudicated date is set for the 28th of April.
Is it normal process then that a citation takes that long to get
Sir-
from the box to the?
Sir, nothing's normal with COVID.
Yeah, okay.
There's nothing normal anymore. I don't even know what dates we're issuing anymore for citations, because that became a question early on. We were trying to work with the traffic courts when the government shut down. There's still some citations here and there that were being issued. So we generally work with the courts. We give the clerk, traffic court clerk a call and says, hey, when do you want us to issue these citations? When I was at Highway Patrol, sometimes when we were really big on the enforcement, our speed enforcement, we clump everybody together and they'd ask us, to space it out a month or whatever. And so, generally with traffic citations, we have about at least up to a year for these cases to be adjudicated.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it's still a valid
for the
violation.
purposes of clarity, does the Guam Police Department get any money from the citations that you issue?
There are only the only citation that I know of that we receive any funding from is the disability citation.
Okay.
Speeding tickets and the like, we don't receive any money.
So we can disprove basically the rumors of I get the old wives' tale that when the police department's running out of money, police officers go out and give out more tickets.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, we don't get anything for those speed tickets that we give.
Okay, we just want to make sure that. Your investigation into the shooting that the officers were involved in Tumuning. When did this shooting occur?
Sorry, when was that, sir?
The shooting that resulted in the death of an individual
Yes, sir.
in Tumuning by officers?
Mhm.
Okay, when did that incident occur?
Gosh, that was November?
November?
I think November last year.
Okay.
So our internal affairs case is pretty much wrapped up.
Okay.
But because there's a parallel investigation on the criminal side with the AG's office being the lead, I've actually discussed this already with the Attorney General of Guam, and we're going to be discussing the way forward with that case.
And because I bring that case up because it brings to a point that you had mentioned earlier. Sometimes you have cases that run parallel between internal affairs and your criminal investigation. But recognizing that your internal affairs or your administrative investigation has got a time frame of 90 days.
Right.
Does that actually become an impediment in trying to, because when you got parallel investigations and you got 90 days to wrap this thing up, but you're nowhere near to be able to complete it, what takes the priority between, do you then have to drop the administrative case so that you can further pursue the criminal case, or?
Well, it really takes a lot of dialogue and a lot of coordination between myself and the AG's office and their investigation. And, I did talk to the AG about this case. I told him that, our days were up already in the administrative investigation, but he was still working on the criminal investigation. And, we're supposed to have a follow-up and conversation about this case and, determine what the way forward was with this. I'll definitely make sure I give him a call because
Do you think
he does owe me a conversation on this matter.
Do you think it's probably necessary then to maybe amend the law or change the law so that it, in furtherance of, so that you can make sure that you cross your T's and dot your I's for your criminal case, that you're not bound by your administrative case?
That's definitely something to consider, especially when the investigation is a criminal and an administrative.
Yeah.
I think they should run parallel with each other, and I think they should have the same time frame. But it's a complicated, I guess, matter with the personnel rules and regulations. I'm not sure what the way around that is.
Well, I'm sure there's something that we can continue to
Yes,
talk
sir.
about so that we can help the fashion and if changes to the law so that, again, I think at the end of the day, what you want to do is get the bad guy off the street. And
Absolutely.
unfortunately, that bad guy is somebody who's wearing a blue uniform
Right.
and donning a badge. You don't want a 90-day limitation to impede in the making sure that this guy gets put away.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody got any questions?
I just want to say, Mr. Chair, I concur with you. I think we should expand that and look at other jurisdictions. I think to bind the government to, before it was 60 days, now it's 90 days. And we have, unfortunately, some individuals in the government of Guam that can be committing some very serious crimes. And if you don't meet that timeline, and again, this is the structure we create ourselves that prohibit us from ensuring that, things happen as they should and ensuring that people are held accountable no matter at what position they hold in this government. So I certainly would, if not introduced myself, support an initiative to do so that we don't put the people of Guam, which is what this ultimately comes down to, it's such a disadvantage that if something is not caught within that time frame, that very short time frame that's given to the government of Guam, cases like this where there's additional layers that have to be addressed with regards to investigations being conducted. I think it's an unreasonable expectation that we place and we don't put enough interest in ensuring the people's interest is protected. So I certainly would be supportive of extending that time. Thank you, Mr.
Senator.
Chairman.
No, I think that, at least for now, you got some homework for us
Yes, sir.
to be able to provide. And why don't we do this, Chief, okay? I'm going to go ahead and we're going to call a recess on this hearing so to give you time to be able to get some of that information that we were looking for. Some of the things, then I'll also talk to my committee members if there's any other things that we want to bring up. in this thing. I think at the end of the day, what we want to do is we like to be able to end this hearing to be ended with, how can we help the Guam Police Department? And basically, I hate corruption and a dirty cop just as much as the three of you do, the four of you, okay? I walked the line before. I walked it with you guys, I've worked with you, and I'm very confident in the things that you can do. Let's see how we can, hopefully just dispel a rumor but if there are things that are happening, give you the tools necessary to deal with it. Okay?
Yes, sir.
That is actually the goal of this committee. That is actually the goal of this. How can we help you do this? There are some, I granted and I appreciate and I recognize there were some, we couldn't go to some of the questions that we probably wanted to ask because of the sensitivity of investigations. I'm going to respect, again, that there's investigations that are continuing, and for the sake of wanting to make sure that the bad guy gets put away, okay, I'm not going to have that discussion here so that he knows how to beat it in court, if you know what I mean.
Yes, sir.
Okay? With that, I want to thank the staff of of the committee, Senator Talai. Okay, ladies, thank you for making sure that we stayed in line. Okay? I want to thank the people who are listening, who are watching this. Most especially, I want to thank you guys for being here and to continuing to show that as shorthanded as you are, you're going to continue to do this. That unlike other places in the world, we're not going to defund the police department. We're going to make sure that our police department is funded, because our police department is the people that we call at 2 o'clock in the morning in case something happens.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay?
Appreciate it.
So with that, I want to thank you for again, we're going to be in recess, but if anybody has any questions or concerns, you can email me at office@senatorfrankblas.com, or you can hand deliver it to my office at 502 DNA Building here in Agana. Okay? The time is currently 6:22. I want to thank my colleagues who stayed with me, Senator Taidigui, Senator Brown, Senator Ada. Okay, the staff from Senator Talai, thank you. And again, also to you and to the legislative staff that's here. This hearing is now currently in recess until we come back with another time and date. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you, senators. Have a good evening.